Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name's Molly, and today I'm going to be reacting to and reviewing Season 1, Episode 3 of The Expanse. Alright, so where we left off, Holden and crew are just being taken aboard the Martian ship, and they are stressed, confused, uncertain about what's going to happen to them there because they believe there's a possibility that Mars may have been responsible for blowing up the Canterbury. As I mentioned in my previous video, I don't think that's going to turn out to be the case, but we will see what happens. Alright, so that's kind of the big cliffhanger that we were left off with last time. And meanwhile, back on series, Miller is continuing to investigate the disappearance of Julie Mao, who, I didn't mention this in my last video, but I'm kind of uncertain how likely it is that she is still alive. Just based on what we saw the last moment that we, saw her in the first episode when she goes into that room and you see this blue entity with what looked like bodies hanging out of it. Seemed like maybe that was eating people, consuming them in some sort of way. So I'm unsure whether she has actually survived for Miller to find her. There seems to me like there's a good chance that she's dead, but Miller is on the hunt and he seems to kind of have a soft spot for her, or at least a kind of a respect for her and her attitude, her position towards her father and towards life generally. So we're continuing to see that develop as well. Alright, so I'm not really going to talk that much about the last episode because I literally just watched it and filmed my last video. So if you would like to hear any more of my thoughts on the previous episode, check out my last reaction video. Alright, otherwise I'm just looking forward to see what happens next, so I'm going to just jump right into episode 3. Okay, here we go.
Alright, let's go.
Hey, go ahead. Destroy the evidence. Word's already out.
Keep your mouth shut and move.
Holden's gonna be antagonistic right off the bat.
If we're prisoners, we have the right to legal counsel.
Hey! Yeah!
Come on, hey!
Oof.
Put him down. Amos! Amos!
Well, they're still not killing him, so I mean, I think that's a good sign.
I know what you're thinking. Mormons aren't funny, but we have a common
Mormons.
laugh shop once a week, and I'd love to prove you wrong.
Mormons aren't funny. Mormons are hilarious. I mean,
Tonight, but I'd really like to check it out. How about next
not
week?
intentionally, maybe.
My pleasure, and it will be yours.
I'm sorry.
All right, Captain Shadid. That's great. Break it up.
This is the consequence of Holden's video.
Yeah? See, I'm looking forward.
So what does that thing
My
do?
father's 3 mothers.
Kind of
Yeah.
help him?
8 parents, 1 child.
What?
Yes. On a 22-acre farm in Montana. North American trade zone. Very expensive to maintain. You were a tax break? That's not the way they saw it. Did you know your true parents? They were all my true parents. Full genetic mix. In which
That's
female each
interesting.
My mother Elise had the whitest hips. So why would you
So
destroy the
he has
Canterbury?
8
Why-
parents?
What are you talking about? What did you do with
Back to that
Alex?
pill
You were a
thing.
problem in the Navy.
Is that like
Years ago.
help him detect lies or like
Disappear, officer. Not technically. He dug my pouch.
what is it? I want to
He was
know.
honorably discharged. He ordered me to fire on a Belter ship.
He was a smuggler?
Who was smuggling people.
You had no way of knowing that at the time.
But I was right. Earth and Mars
Hmm.
been stepping on the necks of the Belters out here for over 100 years, and I didn't want to be the boot. So you
Interesting.
decided to switch sides. I stopped playing. Up to Saturn. In drive design. You never wondered why someone of such obvious intelligence was wasting her life sealing cracks and fixing gauges on an ancient crumbling ice hull. I never asked.
But why would
Desperate condition of your shuttle.
an OPA operative want to be on the Canterbury?
Extraordinary improvisational
Nope.
Did Naomi Nagata effectuate those repairs?
Okay, I don't know who's responsible for blowing up the Canterbury, but I still think it's not Mars. And it's no way that it was Naomi. Everyone's just wrong. Everyone's wrong, but I don't know what it is. Basically, like, they're
Respect.
dividing and conquering. Mars is trying to, like,
And I was honorably discharged.
make this
There's a
happen.
hell of a lot more I can say about you, Cowboy. Yeah, they told me. They told me a lot of stuff.
Turning them against each
Made me
other.
realize I don't know a good goddamn about you. You honestly think that Mars destroyed the Canterbury? Why would they do that? How the hell should I know? Then think about it. That beacon we found, that you found so easy. What if it was planted? What if it was meant to be found? Planted?
I mean, and,
By whom?
yeah, I agree with that.
Who stands to gain? Who stands to gain if Earth and Mars get into a throwdown? How well do
Important
we-
question.
No, they're not animals.
You have every right to be angry.
Jared Harris.
You should be angry.
Another good actor
But
on
if
the
we
show.
act like animals, it only justify their belief that we are. Give him for him a load of him. Treat them the way they should treat us.
Solid point.
I'm innocent those. You wanted to
This is supposed to be like a particular belter accent, but
Julie,
like Miller doesn't speak that way.
see any relation to Jules Pierre Mao?
you screwed her up on
Is this like a conscious choice or different parts of the belt or
Mars used to kill the Canterbury.
what?
Made pay or salary by you. Born. Lived your whole life on
Side. Interesting how.
I think that under
I mean,
that ridiculous hat,
1 second.
there's a belter yearning to
I'm going to
find
talk
his
about
way
this
home.
more at the end, but it's interesting about this whole side thing, both Holden and Miller.
Don't need men like you in the days to come.
Seems a little ominous. Here we go, more interrogation, divide and conquer.
Your educational history is quite impressive.
Is this supposed to be like reassuring with the getting closer and like the touch? Because to me, that would just make me more uncomfortable. It seems super creepy.
Got an ice hauler.
What is that?
James Holden.
What about him?
He has no love for Earth.
He's from Earth.
He hasn't been back in over 12 years.
Well, maybe it's his family. People don't work long-range freight because they love it at home.
What'd you leave behind? Hands right and see them, please.
Is that an insult?
Why did you leave the Canterbury? Question.
We putting all our cards on the table here.
Look, kids. These Navy boys, they're not gonna play with us all day. So unless y'all want to spend the rest of your lives breaking big rocks into little ones at Olympus Mons, somebody better come clean. You stopped me from chasing down the ship that killed the camp.
Come on, Holden.
A reckless idiot.
Yeah? Or it's because they were friends of yours? Watch your mouth. And you? No one knows anything about you, except you do whatever she says.
So what was my big plan, huh? To sit on a
Not
ship
good.
bucket like the camp for 5 years while all of this got set up?
Sleeper agents. You ever heard of them?
Well, screw you.
Okay.
Call guards. You'll take the first few bullets. Hey! Enough!
Come on.
Hey! I'm ready to talk, but only to your captain. I'm ready to talk.
must listen to her all the time.
We picked up a spike in chatter between Mars High Command and 9 MCRN facilities believed to manufacture stealth composites. and
She
gun
set him
chips.
up.
9. I thought there were only 6.
There were more than we thought.
She set him up.
They were taking inventory. I laid to digraph that Morse was giving stealth tech to the OPA. He did what I thought he would. The spike in chatter was panic. They were calling to see if anything was missing.
So they
And since they
didn't
had
do
to
it.
ask, it means that they didn't give it to anyone. Which means that Mars isn't working with the OPA or trying to take control of Sirius. They didn't destroy the Canterbury.
Then who did?
Someone was trying to start a war.
Right, like Alex said, who benefits? So who?
You know what I love most about Mars? They still dream. We gave up. They're an entire culture dedicated to a common goal, working together as one to turn a lifeless rock into a god.
Remember the cat.
So he's dead. Okay, well, that was episode 3. Quite the ending there. I'm noticing that with so far the show that the endings are quite quite something. They do a good job of making you want to get into the next episode as soon as possible. I'll say that. Okay, so again, we got a lot of character development. I feel like you have a lot of insight into the relationships between the small little crew that survived the Canterbury, or the kind of lack thereof relationships for most of them. It seems like they really didn't know that much about each other at all prior to this, and they're really starting to feel like they're learning some things about each other, but not under the best of circumstances. And that kind of distance between them has made it possible for the Martian interrogator and people here to kind of put thoughts in their heads, suspicions about one another that really didn't seem to be there at all when they were working together to survive. But I do also find it interesting that even though they're putting these thoughts into each other's heads, so they're making them kind of question one another, so that when they get together they're fighting about all of this stuff that they didn't realize about one another's past. Still, when you have Holden and Naomi in the interrogations, and then when you have Holden on the bridge with the captain, they're still, sticking up for one another. They're like, there's no way that this person, was responsible for what happened on the Canterbury. So there is some kind of a loyalty, a glue holding them together of some sort, even though they don't necessarily fully trust one another or know everything about one another's past, which is interesting to see. So I like that. I like that development that we're getting. And once again, I still feel like out of that group, Naomi seems to be the most together. I don't know, leadership-wise, she seems to have some strength about her. I really like her, find her interesting as a character. So one thing that I really wanted to touch upon, and I briefly mentioned it before when you had the scene with Miller talking to Anderson Dawes, was how you have this seemingly with both Miller and Holden, where people are pointing out to them that they seem to be like walking some sort of middle line. They're saying to them, you choose a side. So when you have Miller really in a lot of his interactions through the first 3 episodes, but now it's particularly called out here with Anderson Dawes. He is a belter. He's from the Belt, but he works for this kind of Earth security company, and he doesn't really like seem to associate with a lot of the Belters to the degree that he doesn't really seem to necessarily fully identify as one. That was also something I was curious about with his lack of accent in comparison to a lot of other people on series. I'm not sure if that's like a dialect thing, like some Belters have a more pronounced accent, or if it's something that he's maybe actively worked to get rid of. I'm not sure, but I think it's interesting how they're calling attention. A lot of people are calling attention to that, the idea that he's kind of walking this middle line between groups. He's not really associating with the people that he's, born from, or even Earth, which he is working for. He's kind of just his own path. And you see a similar thing in this episode with Holden when he's being interrogated and then later talking to his crewmates. The idea that he actually was in the Earth Navy prior to this. He was strongly affiliated with the planet that he's from, which is Earth. And then along the way, because of things that he saw and experienced, he is going to leave that. And the Martian interrogator is saying, okay, so you decided to flip sides, you switch sides. You abandoned Earth because you felt like Earth and Mars are taking advantage of the belt and you didn't want to be a part of that. And so Holden is like, well, no, I decided not to be on any side, so to speak. I'm just going to go join this basically corporate ship and try to stay out of things as much as possible. And that's kind of his explanation for how he ended up there on the Canterbury. But again, so you see the parallels between these two, basically what seem to be the main characters, is that they're two men that are kind of like seeing themselves as on their own out there in the world, that maybe are kind of disenchanted with the place that they're from in some respects. And so they're kind of trying to say, I don't associate with any side, so to speak, but they're getting these pressures from various forces outside of them saying, well, no, you can't be like that. You have to actually affiliate with someone. This is not a world where you can just choose to be nothing. There's conflicts happening, major political conflicts that are going on, and at some point you're going to have to come down on some sort of side of, who are you going to side with when you have an actual crisis conflict going on. So I think that's interesting and something that I'm imagining will continue to be talked about and emphasized, this idea that can you just be someone who's just either out for yourself or kind of trying to say I'm out for doing the right thing or good thing for humanity generally, or do you have to sort of choose a political affiliation in order to actually have any sort of impact or matter at all in the things that you do or say? So I'm very interested to see how that develops going forward with both of their characters, and maybe just as kind of a theme also generally for the show. And I'm also now interested to learn a little bit more about Naomi's backstory. There seems to be some insinuation that she is associated with the OPA or was associated with the OPA, depending on who you're talking to. And then, we see a little bit more of the OPA in this episode as well. So curious to see where that goes. I don't believe at all that Naomi is responsible for anything that happened to the Canterbury. Whether she has OPA ties or not. But I do think it's interesting to think about, is the OPA somehow involved in this? If so, how? How'd they get this technology? Apparently not from Mars, who supposedly is the only place that has it. Clearly that's not the case. So it's interesting to think about, because as we've seen developing throughout this episode, it appears to be the case that someone was trying to set up Mars with this, trying to make it look like Mars wanted to declare war, pretty much, on the belt. So someone is actively trying to promote a war, and so you see people, Alex, and then also back at the UN, actively questioning, well, who is it that's going to gain from this? Who is going to actually benefit if a war strikes up? So that's kind of the mystery now, is to see, who killed the people on the Canterbury is going to tie into who actually wants there to be some sort of major war. So that takes the Canterbury explosion up to this major political level. And then another thing that I thought that was really cool about this episode is, besides that, we also see how Holden's actions have massive political, serious implications. So I like how they're showing with this series how something that seems like small or simple or commonplace, when it's in a sort of tense world situation like this, even something that may seem like it has to do with just a few people's lives, or the random, sudden, quick choice made by a man who's trying to just protect his crew in the moment, can have massive, serious implications. Because we see at the end, Holden's choice to put that message out there has convinced a lot of people in the belt that Mars was attacking them. And now you have riots there, you have Martians being attacked, you have Earthers being attacked just because they're also associated with kind of colonial forces that are putting pressure on the belt. So then you see Miller's partner, basically it seems, getting murdered at the end there, and the guy says, remember the can't. So as like a direct consequence of Holden putting that message out there, it may have helped them, perhaps, maybe protected them, but it led to other people dying and led to increased conflict and confusion here. And so then I think there's just one other thing that I want to briefly talk about here, and that is the UN undersecretary. Is she an undersecretary, a deputy of some sort? Well, regardless, I'm interested in seeing how they did develop her character somewhat here more too, while simultaneously developing the political story here and giving us more information about Mars. So I liked the conversation she was having at the end with the ambassador there, where he's talking about Mars as this planet of people that are devoted to an actual goal, and they dream and they have a vision, which he doesn't see Earth having anymore. Earth is like this kind of stagnating old colonial power that's just kind of maybe tearing itself apart, so to speak. At least that's how it's being characterized. So we got some insight into that. We got some more insight into the political dynamics of Earth and Mars as well, just based on the fact that instead of asking the Martian ambassador to go to the people on Mars and say, hey, here's what we know, this stealth technology is out there, can you maybe check to see if there's anyone in your system that has, lost or misplaced some of this? They don't even take that step at first. She actively tries to leak the information in the hopes that he'll contact them and they can spy on them to find out what they're thinking, which is a shrewd move, so to speak, because they did, come to the conclusion and they feel like they can trust it since it was spying as opposed to being told that Mars did not actively give out this technology. So they're probably not responsible for what happened to the Canterbury. So it's good they find that out, but at the same time, we kind of get some insight into the complete lack of trust there is there, because they didn't even feel like it was worth the effort to just straight up have someone ask them and see what they say and see if they can kind of work on this together, Earth and Mars, to figure out what's going on. No, they just automatically distrust and want to use spying techniques in order to try and get to the truth instead. So I'm curious to see how that progresses going forward. Not necessarily so much about her relationship there, though that was kind of sad with the fallout, and we learned a little bit about her kind of being ruthless in feeling the need to win and play games in order to get what she wants. But more about seeing, now that the people in the UN know that Mars isn't responsible, are they going to actually reach out to Mars and say, hey, can we work together to try and figure out who is responsible, who wants us to go to war with one another? Or are they going to continue to try and play weird political games, and so then Mars will continue to be suspicious and there won't be any good reconciliation of powers to try and solve this actual mystery? I'm kind of betting on the latter, but we'll see. You never know. Maybe they'll surprise me positively. But yeah, overall, I thought it was another good, really interesting episode. I'm not finding these episodes to be slow in any sort of way. I'm enjoying the kind of world building and gaining insight into the politics and also the characters. I'm liking it. So going into the next episode, I'm really curious to see, like I said, how the political situation continues to develop, but also, you know, is that ship that is approaching the Martian ship the same one that blew up the Canterbury? Probably. And what is exactly going to happen there going forward? And then, you know, what's going to happen on series now? Miller's partner has apparently been murdered, and he seems to be finding out that there's definitely more to this Julie Mao investigation that meets the eye. All right, so with everything that I've said here, I know I kind of talked a lot, that a lot happened, and I just kind of am throwing it out there, but if there's anything that you feel like I missed that was important, or any comments, questions you have for me, and you want to kind of keep the dialogue going, I would love to hear anything you have to say, so please do leave comments down below, and we can continue chatting about this. Keep thinking about all of this stuff in my head as I go into the next episode. All right, so thank you so much for joining me once again. Hopefully I will see you next time. Bye.